talk about tax issues facing mining industries across Africa. So, first of all, is mining a focus for taxation authorities across Africa?
Well, I'd say it very much is. It tends to be a big investment in a country, and it's a very immobile one. Once you've invested, you're stuck. That's where the rock is. So it's a good target for tax authorities, and it seems quite emotional with them in many countries. As a lot of countries feel they've not got enough, and they're going to come and try to get some more. So I think anybody digging a mine in or operating a mine in Africa needs to be prepared that he will face tax audits. That's perhaps not unique. Other companies also get tax audits, but the mining industry seems to get singled out for particularly frequent and difficult and hostile audits, and also for new laws which change the rates you thought you'd agreed.
And Russell, I know that many African countries have very specific tax regimes for mining businesses. Can you talk us through generally what type of special regimes apply and how they work?
I'll try. There's a couple of major features. One is frequently countries want a higher rate of tax. Sometimes they'll be more sophisticated and it'll be a bit like a ramped up tax as you get more profitable, but generally higher than the normal tax for companies outside the sector. Having said that, there's also a degree of incentives to encourage companies, investors to come and develop a mine. So a bit of pull and a bit of push there, but it's generally that's one of the areas. Capital allowances, because a mine is a big expensive thing, there tend to be special capital allowance regimes for deducting the costs over a period. And again, some or other greater or lesser degree of restrictions on that as well, and how long you can carry it forward for, or how much you can shield your income in any particular year. Often similar to what we're seeing in the general economy, but a bit more focused and difficult. In certain places, there'll be some specific rules about what you do with your rehabilitation reserve. Some countries are more sophisticated than others, but nobody really wants to be left holding a big hole in the ground with a lot of rehab work, and the company that dug it has disappeared with all its money.
And Russell, I hear your point about the tax regimes for mining companies changing quite quickly, which is obviously challenging when a mining project, by definition, is very long term in nature and very capital intensive. Can you talk to us about any trends that you're seeing in terms of the tax rules or areas of tax scrutiny for mining companies?
Yes, I think there's a number, and yeah, clearly countries tend to concentrate: are they getting enough reward for the real sales price? If the company's selling to its related parties overseas, selling the product off to related companies outside the country, is the company recognizing enough income? So that's transfer pricing, and it has been a huge focus area and an area of great difficulty. So I think that's probably the one highly important one that's not exactly unique to mining, but it's very much an area of focus. That would be the one. I think secondly, the normal things: costs, have they been incurred? Have you ticked all the paperwork requirements you require? And the one would be around input tax, and we've seen a few problems recently on the VAT. So if you're exporting a mineral, most countries would zero rate it. There's a couple of funnies, but generally it'd be zero rated, which means you should be able to claim your credits. The problem comes in actually getting that credit recognised, especially if it leads to a refund. And either the government will say, well, we're not going to pay you, or we're going to audit you to death, or we haven't got the money, which makes a mess of your economics, or potentially so. Other ones, yeah, inventing new taxes, all sorts of things. Looking at your pay as you earn on your expats and others, and have you paid the right amounts? So those are fairly much things you'd get in the normal economy as well, but just more so.
So clearly, then, the tax challenges facing mining businesses, it's not just corporate tax we're talking about. That can be a real significant cost if there's delays on the input tax side, and also PAYE on the workers. Are there any other kind of non-income tax challenges or trends you're seeing to do with mining businesses?
Well, there have been a few, and there's been things like over the years, precious stones, are they being sold for the right price? Should they be beneficiated locally? And then we've seen a recent inconsistency in the law. In Zambia, for example, one day they'll say there's an export tax on certain precious stones, the next day they scrap it, the next day they bring it back, which it all makes for a great degree of uncertainty for the mine and its operator, and indeed for everybody else. And a long-term capital project needs a degree of consistency. You can get some of it through a stability agreement with the government, perhaps, though it's not always achievable and doesn't always get adhered to. But yeah, we've seen lots of horrible things happening.
And all of these factors, I think, illustrate how important it is to really consider tax holistically when you're looking at the economics for a project, because any of these items can significantly impact the tax costs and thus the margins on a mining project.
Well, that's entirely right. And I think the other thing is to put some sensitivity analysis into it. It's very easy to come up with a special deal with the government and say, oh, that's all right, we'll make some profit here, we'll go ahead with the project. But 5 years' time, 10 years' time, change of government, they think they're not getting enough. What could they do? If your deal looks too sweet, what could they do to sabotage it and change it? And what would that do to your economics?
Makes sense. And what about before the company starts producing income? So obviously with a mining project, there can be many years of pre-production. Are there any tax issues we need to worry about pre the mine earning income?
I would say there's quite a lot. And I think, they probably come in 4 buckets. I may have missed some, but I think there's a heap. Really, tax problems don't start when you start earning money. They start when you start spending money. So think about it. I've got employees. There's pay as you earn, and there's all sorts of other costs that come with that, like benefits in kind, because who wants to have their own house in a remote place where there's no other economy? So that's the pay as you earn, and is it being paid by the right company to the right government? VAT, you can have a long-term project. Are you able to claim the VAT on the development cost? And if so, when? Right up front, so the government refunds you, or is it saved for a later day, or is it just a write-off and increase in costs? And if it's that, is there any way of negotiating a better, more attractive law with the government? Income tax, eventually you're going to want a deduction for your capital cost of developing the mine. So you need to actually record that and work out what it is, and hope there's no horrible laws that you have to claim your capital lands immediately and they get lost after a certain time frame, long before you've started production. So those are more. Withholding tax, you're spending money. Somebody's probably going to want to see withholding tax on it, as African countries love withholding tax. And the final one is, are your costs in the same place as the future income, both in the same country and the same company? It's surprisingly common, it seems to me, that the costs are in one place and the future income's in another, which then makes it a little bit challenging in future to put them in the right place and maximize your tax deductions.
So all of these points, to me, really emphasize the importance of planning carefully upfront, both in terms of really unpacking all of the fiscal costs and timings to understand the project economics, and in terms of identifying how best to structure upfront to optimize your overall tax environment.
Quite so.
So that is what we have to say on mining across Africa. Contact me or Russell if you'd like to discuss further.